Hey, Talia here, and today on I Got Back Up, Dr. Yasmin Lazarus joins me. After being placed into the shielding category during lockdown, Yasmin discovered she had been living with the lifelong condition, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, also known as EDS, that had been lying dormant. Affecting her connective tissues, EDS brought on other chronic health conditions, which have become a major part of Yasmin's everyday life. Yasmin, when you hear the phrase I got back up, what does it make you think and feel?
Well, the first thing I think of is to get back up means you were already up, something's knocked you down, and you're going back towards where you were. So I think that makes me think personally of adversities that I've faced that have changed me as a person and made me actually think, well, when I get back up, so to speak, where am I getting back up to? Because I think back up can be the same person that you were before, but it never is really. I think a lot of things change you. Um, so although the phrase is I got back up, inferring sort of a return to a previous state, I think it's got a lot of deeper meaning there and makes me think about when we get back up from something, we're not the same.
Well, I agree with you completely. I don't think we are ever the same. I think everything we go through in life, whatever it is, adversity or triumphs, we are different every single time something happens. And yeah, we get back up or we get to a stage again where it maybe is someone we used to be or a similar sort of thing, but we are still different in that. So it's kind of getting back up, yes, to you, but like a different version than of you.
Yeah, I think so.
And then, with all of that in mind, obviously, we're going to now go over to your story. And I want you to take us back to where you think most resonates with kind of the person you've become today and just your whole journey and story in general.
Okay. So the person it might be more pertinent to tell you that the person I've become today is a paraclimber, a psychologist, a wife, um, a crazy cat lady, and someone who has a real zest for life. Um, but how I got there is very different from how I thought I would get to where I'm at now. Um, so I have a hereditary condition, but I didn't know I had that condition until a particular point in my life, which is the point that probably resonates with the I got back up the most. So during the COVID pandemic, which I'm sure was really difficult for so many, I was put into the shielding category. I've always had issues with my lungs, and because I was under a specialist, they put me in the shielding category. And at that time, I was living in a one-bedroom flat with my, as he was then, fiance. And he and I were therefore launched into this life of a small sort of space of 2 rooms. I didn't climb a flight of stairs for 6 weeks. They said to me, don't go in shared gardens. This was when we didn't really know much about COVID. We didn't know about its spread. There was no masking even at this point, no testing, no vaccines, nothing. They said to me, don't go in the shared garden. Be careful about opening windows. I mean, it was that the extent was wild. And uh, I'd been climbing, rock climbing at this point for several years, and I'd got quite strong. And what happened is very quickly, I was not strong at all. I would bend over and everything would start shaking, and my joints would feel like they were collapsing. I was going, "Oh my goodness, what is going on here?" And it was from that that I ended up being diagnosed with the condition that I now know I've had for my whole life, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And for me, that was the point at which I had to start rebuilding. I had to rebuild all my strength and rebuild my mental strength as well, because being in a one bedroom flat, two-room flat for for 6 weeks does a number on you mentally, does a number on you physically. And I had to re-envisage my life. I had to think about even things, basic things like going for a walk around the block again. Everything would make me shake. Everything. I was shaking. Um, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've spent all these years climbing and it took a matter of 6 weeks for it to go away. All these years of strength. Um, but the silver lining for me was that I found the paraclimbing community. So, paraclimbing is climbing for those with any kind of disability, long term condition, mental health condition, neurodivergence, sensory impairment, limb difference, you name it. Anything that might be a barrier to climbing will be your friend. And that community has made me feel like I can focus on what my body can do. I think when you become disabled, even though, as I said, it's a condition I've had my whole life, but my level of disability has really sort of really took that plummet then. When you become disabled, things change a lot. But having that community and being able to do something with my body, my disabled body, in a positive light, made me realize what my body can do and not focus on, okay, well, it can't do this. It can't. And maybe it will never be able to do X, Y, and Z again, but I can climb and I can do those things and feel good about myself and my body in that environment. So that's where I ended up. Um, and I am so passionate about it that myself and a small group of friends, we've set up a paraclimbing charity. We've got lots of others into paraclimbing as well. And it's become a light in a very dark time, not just for me, but for a lot of others I know. So I feel grateful for that.
There's a few things. It's finding the things that fuel you and give you some sort of life or determination or some drive, and they can sometimes be very different things to the things that you might have been into before, or they're the same things but a different way of doing these same things. But before we even obviously you can all obviously talk more about that, it's even like you were saying how it's not when things are physical, it's not just a physical journey, it's a mental journey as well. And I think at the very beginning, you wallow more in what you can't do. So you do it's just human instinct. We focus on the negatives. It's unbelievable that human beings have been conditioned and programmed to focus on the negatives. And so you'll focus on all the things you can't do to start. And believe me, I'm sure it still slips in every so often, and it can be hard, and you can feel upset in different ways. But in somehow, some ways along the journeys, you then start to appreciate actually what your body can do, and the things that you can even maybe even start to do different things. And it's the mindset shift. It's being able to shift your mindset into the can'ts to the cans. And that's not easy. Like, I'm not saying that happens overnight, and I'm not saying that it stays, but being able to switch that is really powerful.
Absolutely. And I think as a psychologist, I've been able to have that extra sort of insight into that, which is in a way, it means I sort of think very deeply about these kind of things and ponder on it possibly too much. But in another way, it's been helpful because I understand that actually, as you said, it's totally natural to think about all the things you can't do. I mean, it's evolutionary because when we were cave people, we had to think about survival. And when you can't do something, you focus on it because if you couldn't do something back then, you might do the thing that you can't do and get eaten by a prey. It's natural, um, and unfortunately part of the human condition that we think about the things that we can't do, and that's why they dominate. It's our brain's way of saying don't get into trouble. But I think in the modern world that we live in, we have to recognise that, thank you, brain, for protecting me, but I live in a world that doesn't match that anymore. I live in a world where there are possibilities and we can make adaptations. And I think, a lot of the stuff that we do with the paraclimbing charity is finding a way. I think, there's so many things that I think, you know, you look at climbing and even basic things like getting into the wall. Sometimes walls have don't have a ramp going up to them, and we might have a wheelchair user. It's basic things that we have to think. Actually, we live in a society where we can make a way, we can find a way, and we should do that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's really important, and yeah, being able to use my psychological training to help myself um, has been a key part of my journey, I think. Um, Also, because you have to be really self-reflective when you're a psychologist. You know, we've all heard the phrase, you know, put your own oxygen mask on before someone else. And the phrase, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. As a psychologist, you have to be able to understand what is going on for you
Mm.
to be able to help other people. So yeah, I think being able to tie in my psychological training to my journey of getting back up has been a key point.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And obviously not everyone has that luxury, but for somebody that can, it really can help. But I think also it then can help you give to other people as well, because sometimes people, if they need to see someone, there's waiting lists, or, there's payments included. But sometimes, even if you've just got a mate that understands, that can actually be really helpful. And I think that's actually a really important point to make, is why, a lot of people talk about talking out loud and speaking out. And sometimes people think they only have to speak to a therapist or whoever it is. But actually, sometimes speaking to your mates can understand you in different ways, or can understand things in a way that you might not be able to. And not saying to then disregard other help, because believe me, therapy and anything else is incredible. But if at that time in your life, for whatever reason, you can't do it, that doesn't mean you then don't have to speak out to anybody. You can then just speak out to your closest friends, because if you have a friend that's also a psychologist, that can actually help in a way, to help you, just even if it's for small things, to help you get through whatever it is.
I think, I mean, there's a couple of really important things you've said to touch on there, and I think that to me highlights the importance of community, and
Mm.
that's why our paraclimbing community is so important, because you've got these people who are so different from each other. You know, we all have a range of backgrounds, a range of experiences, but we do share the experience of having a disability or a neurodivergence, and so on and so forth. Um, and when you have that shared understanding with each other and you talk to people in your community, yes, of course, they offer very different perspectives than, say, a family member might, or a therapist might, or your physio might. But it's so important to be able to hear all these different perspectives and take in other people's views around you. I think it's really lovely and really nice. And I think it also, what you said makes me think about the fact that as a psychologist, not only have my experiences training as a psychologist help myself, but I can then use my experience to help others, in that as someone who has a long-term disability and as someone who's neurodivergent, I'm autistic, I can help others. I work with children, young people that experience things that I do, like fatigue or autism, and a whole range of physical symptoms and difficulties. I mean, I had difficulties in school as well, and to be able to empathize with them on that level whilst also providing the professional standpoint, you can see how they feel heard. They feel heard and they feel less alone, but they also know that I'm there to help them with all my training and all the things that come with that. So I think, yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, and then there's a few things that you just touched on just now when you mentioned, obviously, fatigue, even autism. And I want to then, well, first of all, I want you, in your own words, to explain, for anyone that is listening, if they don't know what EDS is, but then also how things have developed or continued on from that first diagnosis, and then how things kind of have led you into kind of everything that's happened since, also with regards to, you mentioned autism, and maybe looking back on school, just everything that's then happened since kind of things started to change.
Sure. So yeah, the main overarching diagnosis I have is EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And EDS is a heritable condition, they call it. So that means you usually gain it from your parents. There's not the type I have, there's not necessarily one gene that's affected, it's a complex combination. Um, but it means that my connective tissues don't work as they should. Now, connective tissues are in every part of your body, mostly in joints, but they're also in your eyes. You can probably see, but I'm wearing very thick glasses because my eyesight is terrible because my connective tissue in my eyes is just, it makes it loose. EDS makes your tissues loose. So I'm prone to dislocating joints. And again, that's why climbing helps so much because the more you build muscles, the muscles can then instead protect the joints rather than the joints themselves, even though obviously the joints should be doing it. But EDS therefore does cause chronic pain because when your joints are loose, everything around it tightens up. So I get a lot of neck pain because my joints in my neck are rather loose and my muscles in my neck go, oh, we must tighten up to be supportive. And then everything's painful because all my muscles are tight. And I'm very lucky. I have a very good physio who basically pummels my neck until it's not tight anymore. Um, and yeah, so it can affect everything. I think someone told me I think only the bridge of your nose doesn't have connective tissue or something like that. Some people with EDS have hearing issues as well. It's everywhere. Unfortunately, my bladder is really impacted by it. I'm a catheter user, which I don't mind talking about because I think it's something that comes with a lot of stigma, and I'd like to get rid of that. A lot of people with EDS have digestive issues, again, has a lot of stigma. So yeah, and when your body's working really hard to hold itself up, you become very fatigued. So I've actually had chronic fatigue since I had glandular fever when I was 17. So it's been a long journey of fatigue, but I'd never obviously understood that it was also due to the EDS. But yes, fatigue for me is probably my most debilitating symptom. I feel like on most days everything feels like I'm behind five glass walls is all I can explain it as. I feel like I'm like everything's really heavy, everything's really distant. I feel like when I move my legs, it feels like I'm wading through sludge a lot of the time. Um, that's what fatigue feels like to me. And no matter how much I sleep, I still feel rubbish. Sleep helps in that it's better for me to be asleep than awake, but as in when I'm not feeling great, I would obviously much rather be awake and doing things. But yeah, so fatigue definitely is really hard for me. But the other thing that often comes with EDS is neurodivergence because your brain is also made of connective tissue, and when funky things go on in your brain, your behavior changes, of course. And I had a lot of struggles in school in that I experienced what I now know was a burnout in sixth form. I was your teacher's pet. I was academically fantastic until suddenly in sixth form, I just couldn't. Everything for me just felt too much. And at the time, um, I was told it was depression, and I actually got a diagnosis of depression a couple of years later when I was at uni. And now I don't think it was depression. Now I think it was the overwhelm of dealing with my autism, undiagnosed, and not knowing. So for me, autism affects me in sensory capacity. I find noises really hard. I wear headphones and earplugs in noisy environments. I find bright lights hard. I wear tinted glasses. I feel like a lot of textures affect me. So I'm very picky with certain food textures. I only wear certain clothing. I only wear certain shoes. I'm very affected sensory wise. And I also can be very rigid. You might notice behind me, if you are watching on video, I have a collection of pin badges. That's only about a quarter of them. I like to collect things. I like to hoard things. I like to categorize things. And that's how my autism presents, and to me that's autistic joy, collecting pin badges. I like collecting pin badges, but this hard part for me as well is the exhaustion that comes with socializing because I'm constantly I love socializing. I'm a people person. I can socialize, and that's a common misconception about autism is that people with autism don't want to socialize or they can't. A lot of us can, and we really want to, but for me, it's just so difficult because running through my head the whole time is, am I saying the right thing? Is that appropriate? Is that a boundary I'm crossing? What am I not meant to say to this person? What does this person expect me to say at this point? And I get home and I'm exhausted, and I lay in silence for a few hours. I'm lucky in that my husband is autistic too, and we lay in silence with each other for a couple of hours after socializing, and it's very lovely. It's great. But yeah, I think again another contributor to my fatigue. So yeah, that's kind of how it all fits together, I guess.
And it's interesting though because it's not just one, is it? It's a multitude of different things, and it's interesting as well because it's stuff that, I mean, you're relating back to school. You're relating years into the past where, do you think had you have known, it would have made a huge difference back then? I know obviously back then also with modern day life and technology is very different, but do you think things could have been very different back then had you have known?
I think yes, in a few ways. I think if I'd have known about my autism, I think my self-esteem might have been better
Mhm,
because what I put down to lack of competence
mhm,
or lack of ability was actually my neurodivergence. I
mhm,
just couldn't. I was overwhelmed. I was burnt out. I just couldn't cope. And I think maybe knowing that would have meant that my self-esteem was a little bit better. I'm really lucky that I've done a lot of work and my self-esteem is great now. But back then, I was really self-deprecating. I really, really had a deep disliking of myself because I believed that I wasn't capable. Like suddenly, I was not able to produce all these grades anymore, and suddenly I was not able. I just couldn't. I just wasn't doing well in school, and I just couldn't work out why. And I know now that that's because I'd reached that sort of what people
mhm,
call autistic burnout. And so I think in that way it would. And I think in another way as well, what would have helped is I really I struggled with a lot of things at school and physically as well. Things have definitely changed. I work in schools now, and I received a lot of terrible comments from PE teachers about my ability to run and my ability to do this. And I know now that I have a physical disability, and not only that, I also have dyspraxia, which is another neurodivergent condition that affects my coordination. But I have a very physical disability that causes me pain when I run. Um, I think and the fatigue, and I think knowing that again, my self-esteem would have been a lot better. I could have gone, okay, this is why this is happening for me, and it's not my fault. And I mean, there were signs like I've always had weak ankles, and I think I was taken to an ankle specialist when I was about 10, and I found the notes in my medical records recently because I had to request all my records for something, and it said severe hypermobility. I was like, why did no one pick that up? Like, why? But it's all sort of when I look back, and obviously hindsight's 2020. When I look back, I go, well, why did no one think about EDS back then? I had gut issues and things like that, but things happen for a reason, I think, as well. And I think I found climbing that was keeping me together, and the fact that I then lost climbing during lockdown. Everyone lost their passions and hobbies, meant that I then understood how much climbing meant for me, not just emotionally, but physically, and how much I needed climbing,
mhm.
and how amazing it was for me. So I guess everything has a silver lining.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to say that as well. And I do want to then go into climbing and how that has played such an integral part in your life. But before we do, I just want to bring up, you did mention about the catheter and how
Mm,
you are okay to talk about it. And you're right, there is a stigma behind it. I think a lot of times when people hear that someone's a catheter user, it's like, what? Or, many other different things that they might say. But I think you're s- y- that you are starting to hear more people that might have to use them, and I think you're right, there is a stigma behind it, just like there's a lot of stigmas behind a lot of different things, and opening the conversation about this is important. So kind of want to ask you then, what what that is like, and how you would want to continue opening up that conversation with regards to that, because I don't know who's listening. Someone that
Mm.
might be using one, or has just started to, or might even be in the process where they've been told they might need to. What is it like for you?
I think for me, the process of becoming a catheter user was hard because you almost have to give your body
Mm.
to the doctors, you know. They are dealing with a very intimate part of you and you just have to submit to it. And I think that was quite hard. I think it'd be hard for anyone. But I think the thing that I would like the conversation to open up around is how we live with being a catheter user. So I recently have been doing a lot of outdoor climbing and a lot of hiking, which I have done in the past anyway. But out of interest, I went online and I was trying to work out the best way to sort of manage my catheters and stuff like that while I was out and about, rock climbing outdoors and hiking outdoors. There are no resources online, nothing. And there's not much you can say in 2024 that when you Google it, nothing comes up.
Mm.
But for that, nothing. Literally nobody is talking about, well, if you need to use a catheter or if you have these kind of continence needs, what do you do when you go out and about? And I don't know whether the implication there is that, oh, we don't expect catheter users to live an active life, which is obviously a terrible misconception, or whether it's that people don't want to talk about it and it's something that they go, oh no, I just do my what I do and I don't talk about it. But I think either way, even if it's a bit of both or something else, I think I would love to talk more about and open the conversation about how people with continence needs, and whether that's I've got friends that have a stoma, you know, things like any kind of continence needs, how we manage when we live our lives. You know, we want to, just because we have a disability doesn't mean we don't want to live an active life. I want to go outdoor rock climbing, I want to go hiking, but how's the best way I can do this in a hygienic and effective way? So yeah, I think that's definitely what I'd like to see the conversation opening up on.
Yeah, and then obviously you were saying with regards to like that, and then the paraclimbing community as well, um, whether it's friends or people that you do just climb with, how how has the community, and how has being part of something like that, but not just community, but how has climbing in particular as well just made such an impact on not just your physical well-being but your mental well-being as well?
Well, I think physically, climbing is the perfect exercise for
Mm.
someone that has a condition like EDS. And it's because it's non-repetitive, so I'm not straining the same joints again and again. Every move you do on the climbing wall is different, you know. Um, it's incremental, so you can start from a low grade of climb, as they call it, and work your way up at your own pace. Um, it's whole body. You're literally using your whole body. You're developing muscles around areas that you didn't even know you had. Like after I climbed the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never had an ache there before. Um, it's mindful. When you're on the wall, you can't really think of anything else. You're just thinking about it's me versus the wall. I've got to get past the problem. It's good for problem solving. You get a sense of achievement. And especially when you're part of a community like paraclimbers, they are amazing because they recognize that everyone has different levels of achievement and they could cheer you on if you got one move further that they knew you couldn't do before. And it's so lovely to have that appreciation that everyone's at a different stage and everyone has different achievements, and it's lovely. So yeah, again, that sort of leads to the mental benefits of it, and having a community as well, that again you're connected by your disability but also by what your body can do. So while you're at the wall, you're focusing on what your body can do, but also in our forums, you know, I could ask there and I would feel comfortable doing so, and I have done, does anyone use catheters here and what do you do when you go outside? And you have people that you can draw on each other's knowledge. People ask all the time on our forums, "Oh, has anyone experienced this symptom before, and is it connected to this?" And although we make it very clear we're not healthcare professionals and we're not a healthcare charity, we would like our community to feel that they can be open about things that would be stigmatized elsewhere. So it's really lovely to have that shared understanding.
I think that's what's so important. Not just with the community, but what you were saying about climbing. It's finding whatever it is, whether it's a sport, whether it's music, art, whatever it is that you can fully immerse yourself in. And I know something like with climbing, for instance, you are so focused on the wall and the problem. And even if you're standing at the bottom and you look up and you think, right, I'm going to do this route, you can still get on it and follow it, but you still are problem solving as you're going. But you are so completely A, present, B, in like in the moment. You are so in that zone that any other thought that is entering your mind, no matter almost how dark it is, actually is just pushed aside for even if it's a moment, because all you're thinking about is where you're putting your next hand, where you're putting your next foot, or whatever it is. And it is literally moment by moment, step by step. I mean, that is the epitome of taking every day as it comes, step by step, moment by moment, because you are literally thinking, well, okay, I'll put this hand here. Where am I going next?
Yeah.
And obviously you're safe, you are on a rope, you're safe, but you still don't want to fall. And there's still the element of, oh, if I do fall, and it's not, in some aspects, obviously it's very different if you're outdoors and, very life and death. Yes, but there is still the element of that. And that's why I mentioned as well, whatever it is, if you can't, or it's not, or if it's not climbing and it's not sport, or it could be any other sport, if it's art, it's being so completely immersed in the art, the painting, the drawing, the stitching, whatever you're creating, the music, whatever it is that you are fully involved in. It's a lot of people, there's meditation, right? There's, sitting in silence or with music or whatever it is, chimes, and however long, 10 minutes, an hour, however long, but then, which is incredible. But then I also believe that sport, art, music, whatever it is meditation in its own right. It's a different form of meditation, and it's a different form of bringing yourself to yourself, bringing you to the present moment, and being able to start to become just kind of almost like more of who you are.
Absolutely. And I think the word mindfulness has become a bit of a vogue in psychology, in our world. Everyone knows the word mindfulness. It's a bit of a
Mm.
buzzword. And I think that people do envisage mindfulness as, well, yes, you sit and for 10 minutes you get rid of the thoughts and whatever. But actually, what you described is the epitome of mindfulness. Mindfulness is being in the moment, being able to, or even if it's conscious or unconscious, being able to send the other thoughts out and being totally present in what you're doing. And I think, whether you're right, whether it's sport, whether it's music, whether it's eating, you can mindfully eat. You can think about the textures and the flavors. You can be totally present eating, whether it's writing, whether it's, I think that we need to be so clear, as especially as psychologists, we have this responsibility that mindfulness does not have to be sitting and meditating. And you hear about how good mindfulness is for you, but you don't hear about these kinds of ways of doing it. And yes, it's amazing for you when you can be present in the moment, but it doesn't have to be, yeah, I sit quietly, cross-legged, and I try and bat away thoughts, because actually, we all know that if I say to you, don't think of pink elephants, you're going to think of pink elephants. That's just not how our human brain works. But when you have a task to do, like a climb, and you do it mindfully, that's powerful.
Mm.
That is really powerful. So yeah, I think it's really important to remember what you've said and how that relates to mindfulness.
Mindful eating, I've heard that. I've heard it plenty of times, and you can mindful eat when you're having a chocolate bar. Think about
Yes.
the taste, think about the texture, think about how it makes you feel, and be so fully immersed in whether you take 5 seconds to wolf it down or you take a bit longer and you really savor it. For that, however long you're enjoying that chocolate bar, that even if it is literally 10 seconds, that's 10 seconds of mindfulness that if you hadn't told yourself, right, I'm really going to think about this chocolate bar, you were probably going to be thinking about your to-do list while eating the chocolate. And then the chocolate's finished and it's like,
Exactly.
oh, it's done, but I didn't even taste it. I want another one. Whereas if that 10 seconds you really savored it, again, it's like you said, it's removing the other thoughts, whatever they are, even if it is literally your to-do list for the day, removing those thoughts and just being right here, right now in that moment.
Yeah, and you're right, even 10 seconds of it is better than
Mm.
no seconds of it. You can have a mindful shower. I
Mhm.
think a lot of people do their sort of mindfulness without knowing in the shower. People really enjoy that time in the shower because you can't tick off anything on your to-do list. Um, and yeah, I think a lot of people, you can really think about how the water feels and the temperature and the texture and the soap and the smells so even if it's during your shower, make that a time where you're not thinking about your to-do list, as I said, because as much as it's only a to-do list, it's stressful. We live a constant instant gratification life. We live in a society where if we want to know something, we just look it up on Google.
Mhm.
Whereas, a few decades ago, you'd have to go and find an encyclopedia. We live in a life that we expect to get what we want immediately, not because we're greedy and not because, you know, that's the only way we can live, but it's just because that's how we're conditioned. Yeah, as I said, we want to know something, we look it up. We need to go somewhere, we get in a car. Like we live such and that means we are living a fast-paced life. And again, our cave person body, it was not designed to do that. So all these threats are coming into our system and we're constantly overthinking them, but we're constantly going, but how can I do the next thing? And society expects us to be doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So taking even those 10 mindful seconds away from that, I mean, obviously more would be better, but even 10 seconds, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, you're right. And we live in a world where we're constantly thinking about the next thing while we're doing the said thing or the said thing before the said thing. Like we're constantly programming ourselves into the future instead of being so present and just, yeah, just trying to enjoy the moments that we're in. And then speaking of which, what is it, what is living life for you like on a daily basis with everything that is going on? What is it like for you every day?
So I think something that I've always found hard actually is living in the moment. I'm a planner. Again, I put that down to the autism. I have to know what's happening at what time and where, and I plan and I get everywhere early and I have to. But actually, I've had to relinquish a lot of that control having a chronic illness because I wake up and I could have a great day. For me, it's unpredictable. I wake up, I could have the energy, I could go on a walk, I could get loads of work done. But some days I wake up and I just cannot. My body feels heavy, my brain feels like it's full of cotton wool, and I have to live in the moment more. I have to listen to what my body's telling me a lot more. And that's something that actually is a privilege not afforded to many people. I'm lucky that the way I work, the very small company I work for, know what I need and know that I get the work done on my own agenda. And I'm really lucky that if I need to have a nap during the day, I go and have a nap and I make up the time in other places, or if I need to go to a medical appointment, and I'm very lucky that I am afforded that privilege where I can listen to my body. But as we said, modern society doesn't always let us do that. And I think for me, that's been so freeing that I know that okay, I've got a condition that means I have to listen to my body. I have to be attuned to my body. I have to know that today's a day I could walk instead of drive, or today's a day where I'm going to have that 3-hour nap and I can do it. And I know a lot of people don't have that privilege. But yes, as we was, your question, every day looks different for me. Um, I have to take it day by day. I do still plan chronically, but I've got had to get used to as well. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a natural people pleaser, and I've had to get used to letting people down. So for me, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance with this. I had to either choose between being a planner but feeling able to let people down if I wasn't feeling well enough, or not planning anything and being spontaneous. And the battle that my brain sort of fought out came to I will plan and I will get better at stating my needs and letting people down if I need to. So I've had to do a lot of work on myself. I've had to come to terms with a, I can't plan everything and I have to listen to myself, but B, people aren't going to hate me if I let them down, even though I feel like I'm a massive people pleaser. And if they do hate me for it, are they really the kind of people I want in my life? And I think that's been an important journey for me to go on and a hard one. I've lost friends. Um, I've become distant from people that I would like to be close to. Um, and it's been hard to come to terms with. Um, But realistically, if I don't do that, I'm going to burn out again. And this time it won't just be autistic burnout, it will be physical burnout as well. So it's a the life decision I've had to sort of grow into.
I think your key point from that is definitely about learning that you're living your life. I understand, obviously, some people that might be listening have children, and I know, I know, obviously, it can play a slightly different role in that respect. But I'm not talking about being a parent here. I'm talking about being a human being around friends and family and that kind of thing. Reminding yourself that you're a human and you need to do things for yourself. You need to do the things that you're comfortable with and that make you happy, and I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not saying that it's easy to say no to people or to cancel on people or to explain those kind of things. And I know sometimes it's a process for people to even be able to do that for the very first time. But it's learning that what you said, it's learning that it's okay if you need to cancel or you need to do something for you. If that person's gonna hate you, then look, it depends what you're doing and what you've cancelled on. But if that person's going to hate you, then you're right. Were they a real friend or real person that you wanted around you anyway? Probably not. Because people that do support you and do stand by you and do understand you for you will understand whatever it is that you're going through or whatever it is that you need, especially if it involves the other person. And I think that's a really key message here is remembering that you have to do things for you. And if that's going to upset someone, like I said, it depends on what. But if that really is going to upset someone and it's going to anger someone to the point where they don't want to be your friend, let's say, then it's more of a think more about who's around you because life can be hard. Life isn't, rainbows every day. And you need the support around you that when you are going through a tough time, they're there, they support you through it. They're not just there when it's rainbows, they're there through every phase of your life because, those are the people that you are going to trust and you are going to know are going to be there for you. And if you as a person change or things in your life change, you'll know you're not going to lose them. And
Mm,
having that, like, whether it's a climbing community, whether it's friends, whatever community it is, you people need people. And I preach this so much. People need people. And you just need to know and trust that when you need said people, they're going to be there because they help you get through the day, the hour, the week, whatever it is that you're going through.
absolutely. And I think as well, what surprised me is I thought I had these sort of preconceptions that okay, if I cancel things, everyone's going to hate me. Again, that's the people pleaser. But actually, the more positive experiences I had, the more empowered I felt because, yes, I have lost friends and I've had people that have been really, really rubbish about it. But actually, I've had more good experiences and people saying, oh no, I'm so sorry. Do you need anything? Let's reschedule. Is it better for you if we do a weekend rather than a weeknight? And I've had so many positive experiences of it through actually opening myself up and going, right, be true to yourself and do the thing, cancel, that it's empowered me to do it more and to state my needs more. And even in different situations where previously I would have pushed through some symptoms, or, I might be out and about and I don't know, be standing for a while. It's pushed me to now go, okay, actually, no, I do need a seat on the tube when I'm traveling, or I I might need to take 10 minutes out of this situation. And the more good experiences you have, the more you can unlearn those things that our brain tells us for survival. Again, back to that survival. We, as you said, people do need people. And we do, and we always have. Our cave person brain tells us you will survive in a group. You need a group to survive. And that's true, but it's also true that you can maintain that group while prioritizing your own needs, and that's the group that you want to be part of your survival team. So yeah, the more positive experiences you have with it, the more you realize, yeah, this is something I can do. And I think, as you said, it's a process. It really is, but it's an important one.
And then if people wanted to find, if they're interested in the paraclimbing community that you are a part of, where can they find you guys?
So we're called the UK Paraclimbing Collective. We're on Instagram. We also have a website. For our community, we have a Discord, which anyone's welcome to join. And we hold socials. We're actually on a summer break through July and August, but throughout and we take a break at Christmas as well, but throughout the rest of the year, we hold monthly socials at a variety of different walls. We have a few in London, so all around London, but we also operate in Manchester, Liverpool, Southampton, Swansea, and the Bristol area. We're looking at, watch this space, Brighton. Um, and we're always looking to expand. We're also hoping to expand to the Lake District as well. Um, yeah, we are UK wide, and our philosophy is if you want to start your own community of paraclimbers, we'll support you as well. So we support others to start. Obviously, we can't be in all these places at once. We started in London because that's where the team, are all based. But our philosophy is we will empower you to create your own meetups and your own socials. So yeah, we really would love to see the spread across the country even further. Um, and we have members of our community that are even up in Scotland. We don't have socials up there yet, but we have members of the community in Scotland, in the peaks, in the lakes, and all dotted around, all sort of just looking to be part of this community. But yes, we post on our Instagram all the details of our socials. Um, we're willing to help anyone that has any kind of access needs to access our socials. Another important point for us is that our socials are all priced down. So we work with the walls that we meet at to get the best price for our climbers because, um, and this statistic shocks me every time I say it, it might shock the listeners as well, that actually being disabled costs £975 a month more than your able bodied counterpart. So for me, another 29-year-old who is not disabled pays on average £975 a month less. And that's things like accessing therapies, accessing physio, accessing extra transport. For example, if I'm not feeling well, I might have to get a taxi somewhere instead of walk it, or um, I spend a lot more money than other people do on Deliveroo because there are lots of days where I just don't have the energy to cook. So they call that the disability price tag or the disability tax. It's things that other people, I mean, I pay as well for my prescriptions, I pay for, it's all these things that add up. I personally don't pay £975 per month more, but it depends on your needs and it's an average. So we try and price our socials at a point that's more accessible. And I think that it's important to recognise that those who are disabled do face financial barriers as well. So yeah, we try and reduce the barriers to climbing. We're also working really hard to help the climbing industry understand paraclimbers and how to support paraclimbers. So if you are a climbing professional, watch this space. We have some guidance we're hopefully bringing out really, really soon. Um, and yeah, just raising the visibility of paraclimbers. We're really keen to show that people with all sorts of disabilities and abilities can climb. Climbing's for everyone, for everybody, for every person, and we're really passionate about that. So yeah, that's the kind of charity in a nutshell.
Climbing really is for everybody, and it's all abilities. It really is a very, very inclusive sport in its own right, to be honest with you. And I think I guess what's so nice about climbing is because when you go to a wall, it's, there's you need someone that you need usually at least one other person to be there with you climbing. So that's already a social aspect. And then if you go in a group and it's not constant where you're two on a running machine next to each other for 45 minutes. You go up a wall and it can take however long it takes, and then you come down and there's the social aspect of there's everyone there, everyone cheers you on, everyone supports you, and you do meet a lot more different people and like-minded people because you're all there doing the same thing at the end of the day. So in its own way, climbing is so inclusive, but I think physically and mentally, and I think it really, a mental side of it really just it stimulates you in so many different ways.
Absolutely. I mean, my dream would one day be to have the time and the funding to combine my passions of climbing and psychology, and specifically child psychology, and demonstrate how effective climbing is for improving problem solving skills, self regulation in children or young people, because it teaches you so much. It teaches you what we call executive functioning skills as psychologists. So, those are things that your brain doesn't do automatically. You have to be able to do them yourself. So, it's things like planning and organizing your thoughts and impulse control and inhibiting yourself and knowing how to solve a problem, knowing how to approach the problem in the first place, breaking down a problem, thinking about things as you're doing them, and being able to manipulate that information in your mind. That's all these things feed into what we call executive functioning. And I really, truly believe that climbing is the perfect executive functioning intervention. It's the perfect way to teach people, especially children and young people, and adults as well. I've learned so much about that executive functioning, because as you said, it's got as well that perfect mix of being social. You do your climb and then you come and socialize and cheer each other on, but it's also got that, as we talked about earlier, that mindful element where it's just you versus the wall, and it's got that perfect mix. It's not constant social, it's not constant on your own, and it's also not a sport that is a team sport. In the For me, I really struggled with team sports because I felt that I was letting my team down because I was never very good at it. But you don't have to be good at climbing to enjoy it, because for me, I'm not letting anyone down. I compete against myself. If I even get one move further than I did last time, that's fabulous. And if I don't, it's great. I'll work on it next time. And I think it's got that perfect mix of people and not people for me. And I really just, you're right. I really think that that's what makes it so unique.
And then in a similar but dissimilar way, it kind of just also goes with life about comparing yourself. There's no point comparing yourself to the person next to you on the climbing wall or the person next to you on the train. Like, you are all on such a unique journey to yourself. You are all such different people, even if you're in the same jobs, even if you live in the same community, even if you're, I don't know, both go to the same restaurant all the time. You could have very similar lives, but you are still so different to the person, like I said, to everyone else. You are so unique to yourself. And we were talking earlier about like instant gratification, but then comparison comes up so much these days, and everyone is so busy comparing themselves to every single body else, whether it's in real life or on social media, when realistically the only person you need to compare yourself and compete with is yourself. And if that's getting up the climbing wall and getting one hand hold up, you know than you did last week or last month, it's the same thing with just your general life. If that means you got out of bed today and you didn't get out of bed yesterday, if that means you were able to make yourself a glass of water or put your shoes on and you couldn't yesterday, that just made me think about with me when I was going through everything I was going through. And it's actually something I don't really talk about much. I haven't used it as an example much, but I couldn't tie my own shoelaces for a really long time. Because I couldn't bend my leg to get into the position where I could even tie my own shoelaces. So I used to walk around with them already kind of done and try to slip my foot in. And even that, I couldn't even get my foot sometimes into the shoe, or I'd have to ask other people to do it. And I remember the moment when I could start getting myself into a position where I could actually get my own shoe on without asking anyone for help. And oh my God, that felt amazing. Like getting my own shoe on. And that's the thing, like, I'm not comparing myself to everybody else that could get their shoes on every day at that time. I was comparing myself to and competing with me. Yesterday, I couldn't put my shoe on. Today, I could. I could put my own shoe on. And that's like, with anything in life, small things, big things, we have to stop comparing and competing with everyone else when realistically the only person we need to do it is with ourselves, because if we do it with ourselves, we're only bettering ourselves every time.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. We live in a culture that is comparison, it's comparison central,
Mm.
social media. Um, we're constantly surrounded by different people, jobs are competitive, everything is comparison. But I think that's something that actually the paraclimbing community demonstrates so well, is that we are also different visibly and not visibly. I mean, some of us have visible disabilities, some of us have invisible disabilities, but even with those in mind, we know that we're all different, but that we're all coming together to climb, but we all know that that looks really different for each other. And it's really lovely that no one compares themselves to each other. Even if you have the same disability, no one compares themselves to each other unless you're sort of competing at really high national level and you sort of have to be a little bit competitive. And our national power climbing team are good. They're really good. And I definitely recommend watching it. And as a little tip off, paraclimbing is going to be in the LA 2028 Olympics. So it's going to be the first year of paraclimbing. Climbing's first year was in Tokyo in 2020. That was then 2021. But yeah, so paraclimbing is going to be there, and I really do recommend watching. But I think even if you've got the same disability, it's the paraclimbing community perfectly demonstrates how there's such recognition about how everyone's affected differently. We all just want to get on the wall and just do our best. And actually, that being said, even at I've been to sort of national competitions, and the competitors all come out in their categories, and they're allowed to sort of read their routes beforehand. They're allowed to sort of have a 5 minute glance at their routes to plan how they're going to get up it. Everyone helps each other. You know, these are people you're competing with, but you watch the footage and you watch it in real life, and they stand there and go, "Oh yeah, do you think on this move we'll do this, and on this?" Everyone helps each other, and it really is such a community of celebration and of recognition and of embracing differences. And I think the world can learn a lot from that.
And then with all of that in mind, what advice would you give to somebody then who I want to kind of go down more of the chronic health way and somebody that might be living with whether it's they've been living with it for a really long time or it's suddenly newly become part of their life. Um and they're at that point where they're not they like you were saying it could be a case where they're looking more at what their body can't do or what they're this whatever it is that they can't do. They're in that stage at the moment where they're too focused on what they can't do rather than what they can do. And again, I know like we were saying it's not an overnight thing. But what would you say to someone that is in the stage where they are so focused on the things they can't do and the maybe the darkness that surrounds that and the well, how am I going to where is the light going to appear? I can't even think about climbing, that kind of thing. What would you say to somebody?
I think my best advice, and I think it still applies even when you're not in that dark space, is day by day.
Mm.
Every day is a new day. Um, Again, as I said, I still have bad days. Look, I appear very positive today. I have days where I cry because I'm like, is this my life now? Am I ever going to be able to do X, Y, Z? And that's natural. You know, when you've lost something, grief is a really long and, you know, up and down process. It's not linear. I think, yeah, it's important to remember every day's a new day. Again, things are not linear. Um, Celebrate the tiny, 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 tiny wins. If you can even put one foot out of bed and you couldn't before, that's a win. And I like to, write them down somehow or take a photo. I like to take photos on my phone, so I like to record the small wins to remind myself. Um, and then you can look back as well on how far you've come. Because even if that was 1 foot out of bed today, you might look back and in a month's time, maybe it was 2 feet. Maybe in a month's time, it was walking across the landing, maybe. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in the details and how terrible things are. And of course, hindsight is 2020 and hindsight is a great tool. But when those small things add up is so powerful. And I think as well, you have to something that I've learned to do that was really hard to do, but I've learned to do is to congratulate myself for listening to my body. If your body's telling you, I can't get out of bed today, you should congratulate yourself actually, because the fact that you are listening to your body, that's a big win as well. The fact you're going, actually, I really can hear my body saying to me, I can't move and I can't do this and I've got to ask someone else for help. You should congratulate yourself. There's so much in society that tells us we need to keep going and we need to do this and we need to do that. So the fact that you have identified, I can't do something, that's still a win. You've
Mm,
listened to yourself and
mm.
you're doing what you need to do in that moment. So I think, yeah, those tiny little wins, day by day, every day is a different day. The days are long, but the months can be short when you look at it all together. Um, and yeah, keep the tiny, tiny, tiny wins in mind, no matter how small they are.
Well, you're right. A win is a win. Whatever the win is, a win is a win. And if that's a win that didn't happen yesterday or even an hour ago or even 10 minutes ago, a win is a win. And
Absolutely.
it doesn't have to be some big triumphant mountaintop or, finishing a marathon. A win is still a win. So no matter how big or small.
Yeah, I agree.
So is there anything else that you would like to share today?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I think that, yeah, it's just important to remember that everyone with a disability, it looks different. Um, Everyone's got their own journey, and your journey is as important as anyone else's, and it's yours. Make it your own. And yeah, as we said, things don't happen overnight, and that's also okay.
Yeah, I think that's actually just a really, really important part is that yes, obviously your journey is your own journey and things don't happen overnight, but it's not linear. And for all the good days, there are going to be bad days, and the bad days are okay. You have to have the bad days to also appreciate the good days. And if you were saying if that means on that day you have to stay in bed, that's okay. Like it's knowing that it's okay. You don't have to be so hard on yourself on those days or those weeks, however long it is. It's okay. You're a human being at the end of the day and you have to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, congratulate your brain on being human, on having a
Exactly.
human reaction. Um, I completely agree. And remember that a lot of the time, what we see on social media is a highlights reel. What you're seeing today from me is a highlights reel. You didn't see that before I got onto this call, I had to nap for 2 hours because I had a terrible headache. So remember, there's a lot that we don't see. Um, and yeah, I think my final parting advice would be remember to enjoy the good days, but not enjoy them so much that you cause yourself bad days, which is something, again, I'm still fiddling with the balance on. And again, that's okay. Maybe I'll never get that balance, but we try.
We try, exactly. We try. Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
As humans, we tend to focus on the negatives over the positives. We are conditioned to it. Focusing on what our bodies can't do, what we think is missing from our lives, what we might no longer have that we once did. And that's okay for a while, but there comes a point where we can also focus on what our bodies can do, what we already do have in our lives that maybe we once actually dreamt to have, and what might, yes, be gone, but what amazing things are yet to come. It's realizing that you can switch your mindset while being gentle and kind to yourself. Some days you'll switch it, and other days will be harder, and you won't. And that's okay because you're a human and we are all still figuring it out one day at a time. So until next time, remember, you have the power inside you. We all do. You have the power to get back up.